as we want to welcome each and every one of you. I am Charles Y. Davis Jr. I'm the pastor of Full Gospel Baptist Church out in Cooksville, Maryland. And we want to extend to you an invocation prayer for this evening. As I want to greet each and every one, as I know we have a universal prayer, I want to thank God for those Christians who are here. We thank God for Jesus, and I greet you all who are under the Islam faith, Assalamu alaikum, and those who are under African American, we greet you, Hotep, and we want to say to you all, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I think if we were at one of those Redskins or those Raven games, I think we can do a little bit better. Now you all are speaking to a preacher. A preacher like to have a little bit of, I wish I could get some help up in here. Good evening. Good evening. Oh, wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. Let us have a word of prayer. Eternal God, we're ever so grateful for your presence. You who were here in the beginning, you who established this moment for all of us to be here. Nothing, not anything, not even the ant that has crawled across the carpet could move without your acknowledgement. And God, we do say thank you. Thank you, God, for allowing us to be here this evening for a moment of fellowship. Oh God, as we're ever grateful to be in the community and trying to be as one as you has asked us to be. For you said that if my people who are called by my name would learn to humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then and only then shall we hear from heaven. And God, we do say thank you. So God, now we ask that if you will lead, guide, and direct us in all that is said and done this evening, and we're going to hope and pray that something that is said or done, that it will glorify you. It is in the wonderful name of God that we do pray. And the people of God said amen. 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 We bring on to you right now.
Good evening. Good evening. And thank you, Reverend Davis. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our community town hall meeting sponsored by the African American Community Roundtable. My name is Lenora Booth, and I'm the second vice president of the Roundtable. So it is a pleasure to welcome you here tonight. The African American Roundtable is a unified organization organized exclusively for community and empowerment, and to be an advocate for the African Americans in Howard County. We have more than 18 different churches, fraternities, sororities, and other organizations as members of the organization. And we have thousands and thousands of individuals who belong to those churches, fraternities, sororities, and other organizations. So we are really a powerful group in Howard County. And together, working together, we make a difference. Please take a moment to read our mission, vision, and values listed in our program. And if you are an organization that share the same vision, mission, and values, we invite you to join the Roundtable. As second vice president, I'm responsible for membership, and I'd love to have you come join us. This event was planned by the African American Community Roundtable under the leadership of our dynamic president, Reverend Larry Walker. After seeing numerous videos of African American men being shot by police and the ongoing negative community relations around the country, we thought it was time for an honest conversation in Howard County regarding the issues we face in our community. The forum will allow you as citizens, our public servants, elected officials, and community leaders to begin an honest conversation in search of positive solutions to some of the problems regarding safety issues and mental health issues. We're so fortunate to have Patrice Sanders, anchor of Fox 45 Morning News, with us. She will moderate this evening's conversation. Patrice and other distinguished guests will be introduced later. Again, I extend a very warm welcome to you and thank you for coming out to support and be a part of this evening's conversation. It is now my honor to present Ms. Lisa Harbor Carter, the Secretary of the African American Community Roundtable, and she's a member of the Society Incorporated, the Howard County chapter. Let's welcome Lisa.
Thank you, and good evening. My role today is to acknowledge the AACR membership. And as Lenore mentioned, powerful organizations as members. So I'm going to call the organization, if you could stand up and acknowledge yourselves, please. The Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Iota Lambda Omega Chapter, the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Celebration Church Incorporated, the Councils of Elders, Columbia, Maryland Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, First Baptist Church of Guilford, the Howard County Chamber of Commerce, Jack and Jill of America Incorporated, Life Change AME Church, the Links Incorporated Columbia, Maryland Chapter, the NAACP Howard County Chapter, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
The honor of welcoming all of our elected officials. Again, I am Adrian Morrow. I'm also the Education Chair of the African American Community Roundtable, and we'll be talking a little bit later about the Education Forum that is coming soon. At this time, we'd like to recognize the following elected officials. When you hear your name, could you please stand? We have Ellen Flynn Giles. We have John Butler, our fire chief. We also have Elijah Cummings. We'd like to recognize Jean Teresa. We would also like to recognize Najee Bailey, working in Calvin Ball's office. Also, we would like to recognize John Sarbanes. Mary Kay Siggety. Cindy Valancourt.
And we're here for such an important conversation that needs to take place. But before we begin, I do need to take a moment to ask us to all keep in prayer and in mind the individuals affected by the devastation in Ellicott City. Words do not describe the tragedy that actually took place, and we all have concern for each and every one of the people that were affected. Now, as was mentioned, my intent is to offer special thanks for the tremendous effort that it takes to have something such as this happen. It is not easy. The conversation can often be difficult for some individuals, but it is a sensitive conversation that nevertheless needs to take place. And so we want to first of all thank each and every one of you in the room. Give yourselves a hand for having an interest. Secondly, we want to thank the members of the organizations whose names have been called. I know that you...
Roger said, I want to thank all of you for coming out to this hopefully very special and important conversation that allows us to really begin a dialogue. I also want to thank Board of Education member Janet Siddiqui. I see her up there. She was one of the early folks that acknowledged that she was going to be here, so thank you for being here. And to all of you, elected, appointed, and as Roger said, all of you for coming out. My role is easy because I get to introduce someone who is a stellar warrior on the field of serving America. He hails from Baltimore, and when I call him for most of these kinds of things where we're talking and engaging the community, he never says no. We did last September, we had a training session, an all-day training session for black boys, BOLD, Black Male Orientation to Leadership Development. I called him and he said, I can give you about 15 minutes. And he left about 75 minutes later. And then when I sent the email, and I'm a night owl, my wife goes to bed somewhere, stand up, Alfreda. My wife, she hates that I put her on the spot. She goes to bed somewhere around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm usually following somewhere around 2:30, 3 o'clock. And when she gets up in the morning, she says, you gotta stop burning the candle at both ends. But I sent out an email inviting elected officials to participate in this late one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And when I woke up in the morning at 7:30, I had a response from Congressman Cummings that he was going to be here and that he wanted to participate in whatever way necessary. And so I asked him if he would bring opening remarks to kick this thing off. So Congressman Cummings is the 7th District, represents the Congressional 7th District, which encompasses about 65% of Howard County. And so it is my esteemed pleasure and honor to introduce my friend, Representative Elijah Cummings.
Thank you very much, Reverend Walker, and to everyone who is assembled here. I want to thank the African American Community Roundtable. I want to thank my colleague who represents Baltimore City, Howard County, and Baltimore County with me, and he does a phenomenal job. I told many people he is, without a doubt, my best friend in the Congress, Congressman John Sarbanes. You know, I prepared a speech for tonight, but this is a hard conversation. This is a hard one. And I want to thank all of you for coming out to do this. There's so many things that you could be doing, looking at the Olympics, trying to figure out what Donald Trump said lately. I know you all be checking them out. I do. And, but you're here, and I want to put this all in context. Because Reverend Walker, I don't want us to waste our time. One of the reasons why this is so important, if you listen to all the commentators who comment about the relationship of African American people with the police and the police with African American people, I don't know if you've noticed that all the recommendations, Mr. Siddiqui, they say we need to have a conversation. You ever notice that? And it's true, we do need to have a conversation. But I want you to understand, as somebody who is used to speaking, why this is so hard. And why it's so hard for people to talk about it. On the one hand, you have African American men, boys, and women who are, in many instances, fearful of the police. One of my constituents asked me just this morning, Congressman, what am I supposed to say to my son? What do I say? Do I tell him to go along to get along? What do I say when I see young men who look like my son being shot down, in some instances with no weapon on them? What do I say? So you have that part of it. You have, and I've seen it so much in our city, and a lot of people ask the question, well, if you want accountability and you want police to protect and serve, are you supposed to go off in some corner? Thank you so much. Are you supposed to go off in some corner and act as if you can't communicate with the police? Or do you separate yourself and you become somebody, just because you want accountability, you want to be protected, and you want service, and you want respect? Does that mean that when policemen go out of their door in the morning to protect our communities, that if one of them is harmed, people assume that you don't mourn? Come on now, don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. I have police in my family. And I resent the idea that because I want respect, accountability, and good policing, that means that I'm some way against the police. Now, if somebody if that's somebody in the room, you let me know. I believe that the African American community, in many instances, need the police more than most communities. Yeah. Right. And so the conversation becomes very difficult because there are those who want to divide us. Yeah. But I say that we need to begin to talk to each other and try to put each other in the other's shoes. Now, let me give you an idea. Let me just tell you. I live in the inner city of Baltimore. No, I'm serious. Anybody who knows where I live in the inner city. I live in what I call the do the right thing block. As in Spike Lee's movie. And I want you to just think about this. After one of the incidents that happened in Baton Rouge, a young man came up to me and he said, and this is what he said to me. The young man in my neighborhood said, Mr. Cummins, that man, the one that was down there in Charleston, that went to Mother Emanuel's church, and Mr. Cummins, I don't understand. Now this is how he said it to me, okay? All right? Don't forget it, and I said it now. I'm just telling you how he said it. Mr. Cummins, you know, they tell me, first of all, they arrested him without incident after they knew he killed 9 people. And then they went and got to the Burger King. But then I see law-abiding African-American men haven't done anything to anybody, and yet they're shot down. The conversation is difficult. And it's difficult because, again, people want to divide us. But you gotta understand, a lot of times when I talk to my white friends, what they tell me is, I don't understand what folks' issues are with the police. Well, let me tell you. When I was a little boy, my first memory of the police, I'm not going to be a long walker, I promise. I want to get to the panel. But I want to set this up. I want to set this up so y'all can have an honest conversation. My first memory of the police was in South Baltimore, where on Saturday mornings, men would play crap, and some of y'all know what I'm talking about, with dice, in the alley. My first memory, Sarbanes, of the police is that they would come up into the alley, drive up, beat up the black men, take their money, and leave. That's my first memory of police. And then, you know, maybe a few months later, the police come in to my first grade class and say, here we are, officer friendly. Other memories in the neighborhood that I live in. I've seen this myself. Young man sitting on the corner, taking his girlfriend to the movie, waiting for the bus. Police come along, tell him to take down his pants in front of his girlfriend. Now, how do you think that makes her feel? And how do you think it makes him feel? On the other hand, and we have to get to the other hand. We have police who are phenomenal people. They give their blood, sweat, and tears. Every time I go to the funeral of a policeman, I cry. Because I know that they have left somebody at home who has to grow up without a father or grow up without a mother. And I know that they went out there trying to help me. But I also know that the police know that there's some people who don't belong on the force. They know, and you know how I know they know? Because they tell me. They tell me they know who don't belong on the force. And so we've got to have this conversation, and I tried to give you both sides because I don't want us to get confused. I don't want us to get so, worried about one side that we don't worry about the other side. The only way, and when my constituent asked me this morning, how do you deal with it? I said, ma'am, I put my head down. She's in the room here somewhere.
I'm right here.
Okay, well, there you go. Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, you okay, thank you. See, I'm telling you. I put my head down and I said, this is what I got. This is what I think we have to do. I said, we've got to first start the dialogue. And then we got to try. It's hard. It's hard if you've never had an encounter with the police. If you've never had them stopping you over and over and over again. I never forget when I first got my Acura years ago. I was stopped, seemed like every 3 days. And the whole idea that we now have to, and then there's another element, and then I'm setting up. This whole thing of mental illness. And I'm so glad that you all included that in there. Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many people in so much pain, they don't even know they're in pain. And so they take drugs to medicate the pain. But the experts will tell you that in most people who have an addiction problem, there is a mental illness issue that accompanies it. And I think the head of the Dallas Police said it best. And this is another side when we think about the police. The head of the Dallas Police said something that I will never forget. He said, y'all asking too much of us. He said, you want us to be the dog catcher? You want us to be the babysitter? You want us to be the psychiatrist? You want us to be the teacher? You want us to be the father? We were trained to protect and serve, but wait a minute. Now you want us to be able to diagnose mental illness. The only way we're going to be able to deal with this is for us to do what we're doing right now. And Dr. Walker, I see you looking at your watch, but let me tell you something. See, in my neighborhood I'm in, the doctor, in the neighborhood I'm in, a fly moves, you know it. But let me tell you something. I hope, to the roundtable, I hope we continue this. Because this is what we need to display to America. This is what we need to display to diverse group of people. Diverse group of people coming together, not throwing stones, not being negative, trying to put each other in each other's shoes. And at the same time, letting the police know we love you. We love our police. You try having a burglary and nobody show up when you call 911. And so I want to thank you for taking this step. But then the next time we have an event like this, I want you to bring even more of your neighbors and more, so that this place would be too small for the kind of discussions we will have. And so Patrice, who is just an absolutely awesome anchor, that she really is, Patrice Sanders, and she is one that constantly keeps her hand on the neighborhoods. And I want to thank you for being here. Thanks, everybody.
So the table's been set for this conversation. And my hope is that we have a good, civil, honest conversation. We're going to start with the panelists, and then we'll have an opportunity for those of you in the audience to ask questions. I would ask you to keep your questions and your comments brief. One more second. We're going to hold off. We're going to introduce each of you one by one. I'm sorry. That was a change while I was sitting here behind the scenes, and I didn't get it over there. But we're going to ask that you keep your comments brief and your questions brief and succinct. I'm going to ask the panelists to try to do the same as you answer, so that we can give as many people an opportunity to participate as possible. As a pastor, my wife will tell you that this is my passion. It's my community. Howard County has done a lot for this little poor ghetto boy who came here from Pittsburgh, unable to read, and now I can stand in the Smith Theater and have this kind of conversation with my neighbors. And as the congressman said, I hope that we can continue to have discussions like this. I also want to especially thank Congressman Sarbanes, whose vacation started yesterday, and he changed his schedule so that he could be here today with us. So thank you very much. Now, you'll think I have a lot of friends, and I try to be a nice guy. I try to make that happen. But as I said, when I call Congressman Cummings, he comes.
She is a trooper. She's almost over it. But I guess the bigger they are, the harder they fall, because my husband and we are down for the count. So I'm going to let the panelists speak so you don't have to listen to this for too much of the night. I'm going to call up our panelists, and if you all will come up one by one. All right, so here we have Howard County Fire Department Chief Butler. We have Lisa Lowry Lomas. She's worked in psychology for 25 years. She's an expert in human relationships and development. She's joining us. We have District Court Judge Wayne Brooks. We have the President and CEO of the Community Foundation of Howard County and former legal counsel at the Rouse Company, Beverly White Seals. We have our Howard County Police Department Chief, Gary Gardner. Councilwoman Jen Terrassa. Student Alexis Bratcher. NAACP Youth Council, Deara Graves. Howard County Muslim Council, Ali Abidi. We have the Senior Assistant State's Attorney in Howard County State's Attorney's Office, Maurice Frazier. We With the Office of Human Rights for Howard County, Mary Campbell. And Howard County resident, Abiel Dawkins. Now I'm going to hand this mic. There are 2 microphones. You all can pass them amongst yourselves. Be ready to just jump right in. We've heard the reason that we're here tonight, and Congressman Cummings talked about it, and Pastor Walker, you all may be seated, talked about it. We find ourselves not in an unfamiliar time, but it's a unique time in our nation's history where there is a bright light shining on all that is happening in our world. And that means that maybe this is the time for a conversation and for some understanding and for listening to each other to figure out how we begin to forge a path forward. So that's what tonight is about. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. We all come from different places, different experiences. And we need to understand those experiences and learn from each other if we're going to be able to move forward. So I want to start tonight's discussion. We're going to jump right in. And we're going to start with the local story of Freddie Gray, because that is something that rocked our area, and then it became national news. It put us in the national spotlight. But that story touches on many of the things that we want to address here tonight, many of the issues that need to be addressed. Central to those issues is the relationship between the police and the communities that they serve and the people that they serve and their relationship with the police. Now, in the case of Freddie Gray, you all know he was in his neighborhood. Police were on patrol in his neighborhood. They see him, and based on their experiences, they don't necessarily trust or know what he's got going on. He makes eye contact with them, and based on his experiences, he doesn't necessarily trust what may be about to happen with them. We see the end result of that. We see where that, what that escalated to, put us all on the national stage. So there's a breakdown somewhere. So the question that we're going to jump right in tonight with for our panelists is, what is behind the breakdown in the relationship between the police and the communities that they serve and the people in those communities and how they view and interact with police? And your answers, I'm sure, will be varied because you all come from different fields and different expertise, but it's each of those answers and backgrounds that will start to lend answers and a path forward with this situation and problem that we're addressing tonight. So whoever has the microphone first, that's where we'll start. So Chief, both of our chiefs, lucky you guys.
Hello. Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to make one brief comment, and then I'll go into this. And Congressman Cummings mentioned this about the conversation, and I just want to point out, and with Reverend Walker here, that our conversation in Howard County really isn't starting tonight. It's been going on for 2 years with the relationship and partnership that we developed with the African American Roundtable shortly after I became Chief of Police, and we have been working and have actual written partnership agreement that we're working on projects together. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in the beginning. You know, I've been asked this question in many different venues, and I thought about it. If you take a look back when I became a police officer in 1984, things were very simple in regards to training. And then you look over the years now with terrorism, active shooter, mental illness issues, because more people with mental illness are in our communities. They're not institutionalized like they were years ago. And those are new challenges for us. Training demands have been excessive in recent years. And I think what's happened in some jurisdictions, that relationship building, the resources in departments towards building those relationships faded away. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I think that actually has something to do with what we're seeing in a lot of our communities. The continuation of training for active shooter, if you think about it, it really started in Columbine with that case in high schools. And today, any public venue can be a target of an active shooter. We've had it here in Columbia at the mall, and fortunately we were prepared for that. But even where we are today, and I do this when I go to the cinemas, whether it's in Columbia or over on Snowden, I look and look for the exit. and I'm a police officer. That's something we all should have to do. But those are things that have changed that I believe, so I can short my answer here, that I believe have had some impact on that relationship with our community, that some agencies have reduced their resources in that outreach, and that was something that I recognized soon after taking the responsibility of chief of police here in this community to accelerate that community outreach, and we've expanded it significantly. Thank you.
So I'm not a police officer, I'm not law enforcement, but I'm a public safety professional, as is Chief Gardner. There's a nexus, and going back to the question, there's a nexus that ties me with the community. And Congressman Cummings mentioned the Dallas police chief. There's another quote that he said also was, you know, come join us, we're hiring, or something along those lines. The nexus of being a public servant and knowing the community and vice versa, and the community not knowing from 6 feet away from the cruiser, but being engaged with law enforcement, and vice versa. It's a two-way street. I've been fortunate to be a public servant here in Howard County and raised and grew up in Howard County. And the best part of this job is being engaged with the community. And likewise, I don't know what Chief Gardner experiences or vice versa. I can't ever walk in his shoes, and I wouldn't try. But I do walk in the shoes of a community member. And from my police chief, my law enforcement agency, I want to know them, and I want them to know me. We got to get closer. It kind of goes back to why we're here tonight, to get closer, close up the space. There's a lot of great space. Close it up, and vice versa. I did get to meet that Dallas police chief 2 years ago, and no, he doesn't look like me. All right, I heard that a handful of times. No, I disagree. But it's amazing his candor. Come join us and get close. Close the gap. And the community's response to that police chief should be, well, come join us as well. It's a two-way street. You come to my door and I'll come to your door. And we got to keep doing that. It's going to be an active, aggressive process. It can't be passive. So that's it.
I would like to piggyback. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, is this one? Okay. I'm De'Ara Graves. I was introduced. I'm a part of the Howard County NAACP Youth Council. And just to answer the question, as a youth, I have to agree with the other panelists here about engaging with law enforcement. I know I go to school at Seton Keogh High School, and I go to school with inner city kids. So I know that their situation is almost nothing like mine. So I know what it's like to be on both sides of the spectrum. Here in Howard County, we have an awesome police force. And one of my role models is sitting right here in the crowd, Miss Corporal Walls. She actually was... One of the things I was so thankful for that they did in Howard County schools, I actually started going to private school my 9th grade year, and I went to Howard County Public Schools up until my 8th grade year. And one thing I thought that was just a fantastic idea was that they put police officers in the schools, and that's how I met Corporal Walls. And that was one of the best experiences ever. Knowing her, I really developed respect for police officers. I really got to know a police officer. So every time I look at someone in blue, I just think of her. So I think that is a huge part is engaging. She is just somebody that I can look up to, and it makes me so comfortable to be around her and to know that she's serving the community. Thank you.
To piggyback on the theme of relationships, when the interaction in a relationship is one-sided, to address the question of how the breakdown occurs, all you have to draw upon is your experience. So when it's consistently negative or punitive, or the interaction is only as a result of resolving a problem, that's all you know. Fortunately, here in Howard County, our police department, generally speaking, is very active and interactive and does outreach. However, in communities, this one included, in certain areas where there is only the interaction of negativity, then there's a breakdown in the relationship. And so then, of course, there's fear and there's trauma, and that's what people pull upon.
Well, first, I want to thank the African American Roundtable for the opportunity to speak. Like the Congressman, I am a resident of Baltimore City. Spent there 25 years of my life at the City College. And I think the issues of the breakdown is one of trust. And if you spend so much time, I grew up in the northeast side of Baltimore City near Greenmount Avenue. And if you traverse down in any day, at least for me, you're gonna get stopped. And you're perceived as a threat. And over time, when you come to Howard County, I'm a prosecutor now, you get the opportunity to speak with officers in different units and assignments. You get to see them as not as the police. We spend so much of our time labeling people and indicting groups off the actions of others. One bad person does that thing and it's the police. One black person does something and it's black people. And oftentimes, it's just that person who's doing that thing. We need to have a conversation to come together as one to show empathy on both sides. To realize that we're gonna need the police in Baltimore City where I grew up, we're gonna need the police in Howard County, and we're gonna need a conversation which reflects the hopes and wishes of both groups. So the more we get talking, I think the better things will be.
And you, go ahead.
Okay, and just to piggyback on what you were saying and what you said about fear, I think a lot of the breakdown is the combination of we have plenty of fear and distrust, but there is no empathy there. And so if police in a neighborhood where they have some fear or mistrust of the community, and the community shares that same view, there's never going to be any way that they're gonna be able to work together. And what I benefited from early on back in high school is one of my mentors was a police officer and detective in Baltimore County. And us building that personal relationship broke down the mistrust that I had because, I mean, when you study history in America, the relationship with the black community, colored communities, and police is not a great one. And that's what my understanding was as I kept studying and to have that relationship. And he made the time to build that trust with me, and I made the time to build the trust with him. We broke down a barrier, and now I'm able to do that and try to encourage others to do the same thing.
Up front, and then we'll.
Yes, my background isn't really in law enforcement or public service. I'm an attorney by training. But I was head of workforce diversity for Johns Hopkins Hospital and president of the board of the hospital here. So I know a lot about the healthcare community, and those are the same issues that we're dealing with today. Unconscious bias is a huge problem in all institutions in American society. And we all have some of the research that's been done in the healthcare community deals with doctors of color who also discriminate against patients of color. So we all have to recognize that we have biases, and it's only when we recognize that we have them that we can start to change them. My experience working with the Rouse Company, where I was for 20 years, was absolutely amazing. For any of you who knew James Rouse or worked at that company, it was extraordinary. But there was racism in the Rouse Company too. I mean, there were things that were said to me back in the 70s that would make your hair grow, curl, do whatever it needs to do. But one thing I will say about the Rouse Company, there were consequences for bad behavior. And very often, that's what you don't see, whether it's in the healthcare environment or the law enforcement environment, when people behave badly or inappropriately, because you can't stop stupid. People will always do something stupid, but there need to be consequences for that behavior and to recognize that we all have those unconscious biases.
A lot of you are mentioning that and talking about that, and I want to read an excerpt of something that I read to talk about how minorities are perceived in the broader community, and I'd like to get your thoughts about what this person had to say. This was a Black author who was having he was talking about a conversation that he had with his white aunt. And he was a pastor. It was actually a sermon that he was going to deliver, and he began to talk about why he doesn't talk about racism with white people. He says he doesn't, his white aunt doesn't have to experience racism, and therefore it's not real to her. If you haven't been through it, it's not real to her. She and most whites, he said, are supported by the system, and so are mostly unaffected by it. And he's went on to say that racism doesn't mean slavery, it doesn't mean avoiding the N-word, it's even more subtle than that. Racism is the fact that white means normal and everything else is different, and there may be something wrong or bad with that. And living every day with institutionalized racism and then having to argue its existence is tiring, it's saddening, it's angering, and yet, if we express any emotions while talking about it, we're toned police. We're told that we're being angry. And in fact, a key element in any racial argument is, the angry Black person, and that's kind of where the argument and the conversation shuts down. They're being overly sensitive, they're being overly emotional, they're playing the race card. And he's saying that is why he does not have this discussion a lot anymore with white people, because they will not understand where he is coming from, what he is intending to say. And in the same vein that you said that everybody's lumped together in one group, he says that is another sign of subtle racism, that there's one Muslim killer, but that's a sign of Islamic terrorism, and we have to be afraid of all. Or one Mexican does something, and now we've got to build a wall, we've got to build a border. One Black person does something, and now we're all thugs and criminals. Is that overstating the problem, or is that the problem, the perceptions of how we're looked at? And even Congressman Cummings brought up the Charleston shooter. And when the newspapers, the media started talking about him, a lot of that was the shooter, and is there a mental issue? It was not the killers, the thugs, the criminal. It paints them in a different picture, whites versus Blacks. Is that a conversation that needs to happen to get to what's going on within the communities and the police and the people that they police?
Speak to that as a
Yes.
white person. I'm here, I'm white. I've been white all my life. I grew up as a child in Sparrows Point, Maryland. My father worked for the Bethlehem Steel Plant. We went there in 1943, and I learned all about racism, culturism, big business, and hate, and racism, and elitism. I learned it all at the lovely place that they called Sparrows Point, Maryland. And I know there are people here, and I know people who lived in Turner Station. I took the streetcar to go to my school in Dundalk, and I know what it is about. And when we're talking about white racism, we're talking about an institution where one group of people controls the resources, the power, the culture, and all of the things that are good in this place. And so whether it's your church or your company or your country or your state, if one racial group controls that and does not allow other racial groups to have shared power and to be in positions of power, you have a terrible dynamic set up that is what we're experiencing. And it goes even beyond the institutional kinds of slurs and things that people deal with every day. As a white person, you're like a fish in water. You don't know there's any water there because that's it. You're in it. You're it. You're the thing. And I've been doing this kind of work for about 40-some years. And I think probably because of the experiences I had as a child. And sometimes I just get very, very tired because I have family. I have white brothers and family and nephews, and they don't get it. They don't get it. I'm so tired of trying to explain it, to try to, so it's like I almost want to gravitate to, oh, be my friend because you're black, because it'll be easier to be with you than it will be with my white people. Will you be my friend? Okay. And so, for me, I work for Howard County government. I'm the Office of Human Rights. We do investigations in housing, employment, public accommodation, law enforcement, and financing. And so discrimination is underreported. You need to come to us and when you feel like you're being discriminated and file a complaint and let us investigate it. So that's my little ad for tonight.
Excuse me, can you take something from the audience, please? A question or a statement?
Let's one of my other panelists speak. He's been waiting to speak, and then you will be next. I don't know if you even need a microphone. We'll continue right after this.
Hi, everyone. I think it's really important to talk about this idea of perception because myself, I've grown up in multiple different environments. I grew up in New Carrollton. I spent most of my childhood there. Moved to Laurel, went to school in Baltimore. So I've seen all sorts of people and all sorts of things, right? And as a Muslim American, that adds another sort of layer to it. And one thing I've realized is when you see other people, this perception of them that you see elsewhere, like in the media or from what you hear secondhand, doesn't truly apply. So you see them as more of a human being. And sometimes you have to kind of get out of your bubble to see that. And I think events like these and conversations like these, like the hard conversations, are really important to have and are more important to have just because you get out of that bubble and you experience the perception from another person. Like, for example, a police officer. You'll, as a citizen, a non-police officer, you'll see one interaction from, say, one window. The police officer will see it from another window, but you don't realize that it's actually like a large glass pane with multiple windows. And the only way you see that is if you come together and talk, and then you can see the entire window for what it is. So that's kind of my take on it.
Let me just ask one thing, and then I'm going to come to you. This all sounds great here. This is all very kumbaya here. We've got to get to know each other. But how do you take this into the streets? And I'm going to give this back to the police chief. How do you take this feeling that we have right here, but mix it with the perceptions that we know exist out there and bring this all together in the streets when you come up against each other? How do you take the community, the resident, and let them get to know a police and say, okay, I want to make sure you get home tonight, but I want you to know me and I want to make sure I get home tonight. How do we take what's here and put it on the streets?
I don't think there's any one way. I think we have to do that in many different ways. And getting to know the community is going to occur in many different ways. I just wanted to step back 1 second when we talked about bias and implicit bias that you mentioned. And that was something that we recognized, and we actually started a program just a few months ago that Sergeant Wall was one of our instructors that we have for every police officer to understand that. I mean, we all have to understand people in our community that we police and understand that implicit bias does exist, everyone in this room, to include everyone in this room wearing blue. And that's what we have to understand when we go out each and every day to police. At the same time, we have to find ways. It's nice that we're here. It's nice that I have some of my commanders here. But it's important that every police officer, from me on down to those who are interacting with the community, in the community each and every day, that they have those same interactions and develop an understanding. The very first forum that we had 2 years ago at Bridgeway Church, a few people came up to me, and it actually hit me for the first time to understand this. Both African American, one lived in Prince George's County, the other in Baltimore City. And they talked to me about some encounters that they had. And while I think we have a great police department here in Howard, there's always room for improvement. But one of the things I thought about that I did not recognize and that I now share with each and every officer in in-service training, that those interactions and those perceptions carry with them wherever they grew up and wherever they currently live. Not everyone traveling through Howard County live in Howard County. And so they bring that with them into the community, and that bad interaction in Prince George's, Baltimore, anywhere, comes with them. So when you interact with them here, that may be on their mind. And sometimes, so we have to step outside the box as police officers here in Howard and also understand those interactions may not have always been good when they interact with us. So it is developing that understanding in-house with our own officers at every level, and then also being able to listen to the community as to what they have encountered, whether it's in Howard County or outside, because that's important for us as well.
All right. Sir, in the audience, can we let you...
Okay. My name is John Butler. I am a member of the Helping Hands Enrichment and Leadership Foundation, which my wife founded in the school system of Howard County in 1987, and we've been going continuously to educate youth in the Howard County Public Schools. So we have an official partnership. There are a couple of observations that I've made. Number one, there's a book I believe everybody in this room and everybody in the United States should read. It's called Brainwash. It's by Tom Burrell. It talks about the history of slavery and brings it forward to some of the practices of white supremacy that still exist today that are causal for some of the issues that we will not be able to get past until whites can say truly that all men and women are equal. There still is an understanding you can be poor and white and think you are much better than a rising up. That's the first part. So there's a book, Tom Burrell, Brainwash. Watching the Olympics last night, the darling of the gymnastics, I can't even think of the name, the young white girl.
No, he's
okay. Young white girl.
Yeah.
When they brought up Gabby Douglas, they talked about all the trouble she's had since she won the gold medal in the last Olympics. They said the young white girl was the darling of the balance beam. All right? Gabby Douglas went before her and was nearly flawless. The only thing they pointed out that when she stuck a landing, her toes weren't quite on the beam. The white girl almost fell off the beam and got less of a score. And the commentators still try to justify why she was the darling of the Olympics. So when you have those kinds of attitudes, the two I've illustrated, you're not going to change. Your experience is not going to change until you suck it up and admit that I'm no greater than any other human being on this earth. And the privilege that I get as a white person is unjustified because it's been on the backs of blacks.
Is there... We may want, others might need to hear you.
I appreciate all the comments about our wonderful community here in Howard County, and a lot of it's true. But in a few years, Howard County is going to become what the cities that have been having a lot of trouble are right now. I live in a community where, Longreach, where there's a concentration of low-income housing. there's a separation that is not the Rouse design, but it has become that over the years. There are 3 communities here that are low-income communities, concentrated housing with people with same income, which produces a lot of what the problems are in Baltimore and some of the larger cities. So my question is, in Howard County, why are we allowing that to happen? It was not the Rouse's original design. Rouse's original design was wonderful because he did not have groups of people separated. So my question is, how do we prevent our community from becoming what we, hope it won't become, but it's steadily becoming that?
Rouse's original design actually did have pockets of poverty. It was low-income housing. I think it was called Columbia Interfaith Housing real early on. But that was the style of low-income housing during the 70s and during the 80s. In today's world, from what I understand from talking to county leaders, the new way of doing low-income housing is to have multi-levels of housing. So some of those pockets that currently exist may be going away. A number of those low-income pocket communities are going to be sold and redeveloped as mixed-income communities. And that's an effort to keep from getting pockets of poverty. But that was part of the original plan. But it was supposed to be in between middle-class housing. But there were pockets of poverty in Howard County.
And let me bring those two kind of concepts together, and let's talk about this. He's talking about years, and you mentioned it as well, years and years of what this country has been coming to bear on what is happening right now. And you can't deny that there's cause and effect there. But how much is cause and effect? And you'll hear the flip side of the argument. Well, when are you going to take responsibility for your communities? When are you going to do something about your own communities? When is, if Black Lives Matter, when are Black lives going to matter in your community? Those are the two sides of the argument you hear. So talk about the dynamic. How much is passed on? How much do you have to get out from under? And how this plays out in our judicial system. What's the cycles that we see there? But Councilwoman Jen, I see you with the mic.
Do I hold this? Okay. I think there's some of us who are working very hard to deconcentrate poverty. And I think when you look at the original Rouse vision, while there were buildings, there was familiarity. There were people there was low income, middle income, high income in each of the neighborhoods, unless maybe you're talking about something different and maybe you're more familiar with something, but if you look at Wild Lake or Long Reach or any of the original villages, there were people in apartments and townhouses and houses all living amongst each other, and there weren't areas like we are building in downtown where there will be huge areas where there'll be high income, and then there'll be just sort of smaller areas where the lower, not low income, but lower income area people will be concentrated in buildings of 50 and 100%. And I do think that has an impact because just like we were talking about, when you have familiarity, when people know each other, when people live amongst each other, that makes a difference. I do think that makes a difference in terms of poverty as well. And I think a lot of times those neighborhoods wind up being areas where there are people of color, and there's less than when there are fewer people who are white, and they become areas that white people in the neighborhoods are less familiar with. And I think that is a huge problem in terms of both racial and economic injustice.
When people have mentioned perception and biases and familiarity impact people's perception. And I think that we also, as residents within the community, have to take some responsibility and accountability for our own behavior and our own perceptions. I am originally from Chicago, And Chi-Town, yeah. So, and I go home all the time. I've been here 10 years. And I go home all the time. And my family lives on the south side of Chicago. And I drive my very fancy car, and I wear my very fancy clothes, and I park on the south side of Chicago, and I get out of my car and I walk down the street very comfortably, and I go into my relative's home and I come home. And I get back into my car, and then I come back to Maryland. And I drive down these streets and I park and I get out of my fancy car and my fancy clothes and do the same thing here. I carry myself the same way no matter where I am. And it's because I am comfortable. And if I am pulled over or stopped by the police, which I have been last week, because let's just say, that's another story for another time. But I was pulled over. My son, I have 2 sons, one is 16 and one is 20, and my 16-year-old son was immediately frightened. Mom, and so I'm digging in my purse, like, oh my goodness, where's my license? And he's like, don't go in your purse, and I said, boy, please. And because my perception and the way I carried myself is I've done absolutely, well, I did a little something wrong, but, but I rolled down the windows, and when the police officer approached my car, I had all of my identification out, and I said good morning, and I smiled at him, and I handed him my information. I do realize I am a female, and and I'm older than 20, and so my experience, because the perception and assumptions that go along with that of me are probably different than others, so I'm not minimizing anyone's experience, but I am going to say that we too have to manage our own perceptions. You know, I assumed that I was going to be okay and carried myself in such a way, and it turned out $50, you know, but it was okay.
Oh, can I?
Do we have some? Let our panelists.
All right. Okay. So, speaking of what you were talking about like kind of, low income houses and clusters, in school, it is very obvious who lives in those clusters and who doesn't. And when there is an interaction between people of higher income, the kids, the usually white kids, they don't want to interact with the lower class. And so I feel like in order to kind of not make it so that there's just a huge cluster of low income and poverty people living in areas, excuse me, there needs to be a better interaction in schools specifically. I feel like there should be more interaction with community. I went to Hammond High School and we had a little bit, but I felt like there could have been more so that we could have conversations and talk, and students from higher income could hang out with the lower incomes without there being any biases or unconscious biases.
I want to bring our judge into the conversation. Thank you. How do you see, in the judicial system, these perceptions and biases play out? You've heard a lot lately with the protests and things going on that minorities are treated differently than whites when it comes to the number of arrests. They're arrested more than white people are arrested for the same crimes. They're convicted more often than white people for the same crimes, and then are incarcerated more often. Is that the narrative you see play out, and what role do these perceptions have in what you've experienced?
Yes, I do. Quite honestly, first and foremost, let me say thank you to the crowd for coming out here. I'm not from Howard County. I'm gonna give a shout out to Philadelphia. I also give out a shout out to the campuses. I don't see many of them here. So I'm representing, as you can tell by the Red Sox. But in terms of the judiciary, let me say this first, because I'm going to speak both as a black man and as a member of the judiciary. Growing up in Philadelphia, I grew up in the 70s, and I don't know if many of you know about Philadelphia in the 70s, but we had a police commissioner, not way different from our commissioner here. Mayor Rizzo became the mayor. He was a tough old son of a gun, quite honestly, and the police department sort of followed along. As an African-American youth at that time with an afro and wearing a black leather and very militant, the police were my enemy. And I believe that I was their enemy as well. And some of the things that Congressman Cummings had mentioned were very similar to the experiences that we had. Just walking down the street for no reason whatsoever. You could be stopped by a police officer and taken to a community that they knew you shouldn't belong into because it was a different gang area, and just dropped off for no reason whatsoever, knowing that more than likely you might not come out there alive or at least healthy. And so I grew up with a lot of those thoughts, and for a long time I had that. Now, here 30-something years later, I am a member of the judiciary. And I say this, we are in fact blessed to be here in Howard County. I've over the past couple of years that I've been on the judiciary here in the district court in Howard County, I've had an opportunity to meet with the chief and to meet some of our police officers. Matter of fact, my son-in-law is now a member of the Howard County Police Department. And I have to tell you, almost 100%, the police officers that I have met, that I've had an opportunity to have before me here in Howard County, I believe are hardworking individuals who are really trying to just protect and serve. They do certainly, they should get our applause for that. They are hardworking. There's a few of them. I haven't talked to the chief about them yet, but I'm still getting an opinion about some of them. But we'll work with them nonetheless. But that's the point. I mean, I think, as some of us have been talking about, you have to have a familiarity with some of these people, and they've got to know you, and you've got to get to know them. And as I said, from getting to know them, it has in fact changed my opinion. But let me talk about the judiciary. Again, in Howard County, we are again blessed with the judiciary that we have. We have a small judiciary, 5 judges on the circuit court and 5 judges on the district court. But it is probably one of the most diverse benches that you will find around the state. We have on the district court an African-American female, and now me as the African-American male. We have a Hispanic male and 2 white females. So it is a pretty diverse bench. So I don't necessarily see the problems with my colleagues, as I know, and having had discussion and having had met some of my colleagues around the state. I don't want to talk bad about people, but there are some perceptions and some mindsets that are hard to change, as gentleman up there indicated. They've not been exposed to a diverse community. I've always said that black people have always had to deal with white people. And so we've gotten used to dealing with white people. But a lot of white people don't have that same opportunity to deal with black people and get to understand and appreciate who they are. And so some of my colleagues, when they have black individuals, just like I understand that white teachers have problems when they have young black African-American males. I had a young, rambunctious black African-American male. You know, sometimes you had to let the teachers know that that's just how some black African-American males work, and that's how they do. That doesn't mean that they're bad. That doesn't mean that they're dangerous. That's just means that you gotta learn how to work with them and deal with them. And don't send them to the principal's office, Adrian, every time there's a problem. So my colleagues that have those problems and those perceptions. The good news is that the judiciary does try to have diversity training to help work with that. And so I see a change, but certainly it's a ways, we've got a ways to go, people. But let me also say on the other hand, because I get this sometimes too, and I know, and I'm looking down the audience to make sure I don't see any my defendants out there. But let me tell you this, as an African American judge, there is oftentimes when people will come up to me, will come up to the bench and say that they have been racially profiled. Matter of fact, I had one African American woman that said that against an African American police officer. I don't know how that worked, but look, I understand profiling. Just like most of you in this audience, I've been stopped and for no other reason than driving while black. So I understand that, but look, understand this, if you're wrong, you're wrong. So don't come to me with those kind of excuses, because if I find you guilty, I'm gonna find you guilty regardless of your race.
All right, let's go back. Hello, several people in the audience that have questions. Let's go right here.
I want to say this lovingly to the 99% police officers that are good. God bless you. I'm praying for you. I love you. But here's my struggle. It only takes one to kill me. It only takes one to shoot us down. So my issue is this. Have we come to a place now where we need to rethink these police Bill of Rights and all of these things that protect the police that does not allow them to be brought to trial and convicted? Because while I'm waiting for you to deal with your biases, while I'm waiting for you to deal with your issues, I'm sure if enough of y'all end up going to jail, you won't be shooting with impunity. You won't be killing as easy. Because if you can meet a black man in the street and he got to go to jail for resisting arrest, if you start going to jail for mistreating us, abusing us, violating our civil rights, while you getting your biases in order, and you start losing your paychecks, and you start doing your time, and you be going before that judge, I'm sure a lot of people will stop thinking that's just an angry black man. I want to know, is it at all possible that we can write, and I know we have the Bill of Rights, and all I'm asking for is equal protection under the law. This is not a black issue. This is an American issue. Because we are Americans in this country. And we are entitled to all of the rights and protection of this Constitution. And if I gotta go to jail for breaking a crime, then I think you as a police officer, be you in a blue uniform or what, if you wrong, you wrong. And I need to see some convictions. And while I'm out there, let me just drop this in your spirit. Freddie Gray Jr., I was with his natural father the day before he died. I cried with that man. I've been his friend for 30-some years. We cried with that brother over the fact that his son was laying in the hospital and he couldn't understand why.
We unfortunately have so many people.
So I just need to know, are we at a point where we can do something, where we can start prosecuting police officers and see some jail time? Because I bet you them guns won't come out that way.
Brother Powell, we recognize the need to get the conversation.
I really have to, as a youth, I really have to agree with what he just said. It's really about, in my eyes, as a young person, it's really about accountability. And it's about holding people responsible for taking another person's life. I stand by the belief that no person should die. No person should die. If a person who just shot up Planned Parenthood, or killed 2 people, or who just shot up a church and killed 9 people is allowed to walk out and wear a body armor, what makes it different for somebody who's committing a petty crime? Why do people who commit petty crimes, why are they given death sentences? That is my problem when I see that in the news. And what is a huge part of being young now is we have Twitter, we have Snapchat, we have Instagram, we see it all. And we cannot, a huge thing about the youth is I feel like older people underestimate us. Older people do underestimate us. Alexis and I, we are the epitome of Black youth. Please recognize that. Not done. Yes. But I just want to say, please don't underestimate the Black youth. Get us involved. Let us participate. Like we just participated in the Black Lives Matter protest at Columbia Mall. Please, get the youth involved. Thank you.
We're going to go out to the audience.
His immediate reaction to the fact that I've been pulled over by the police. I mean, they are bombarded not only with social media, but with the media and the news and with negative images of themselves, of people that look like them, which is one of the reasons why it was such, irrespective of your political affiliation or beliefs, it was such a wonderful thing when President Obama was elected, because here was a positive person of color in the media for our youth to look at and hear from and be able to compare themselves to. So self-esteem is impacted, self-image is impacted, and when you are young, trying to figure out who you are and grow into the person that you can be and reach for what it is that you want, and you're told consistently, whether directly or indirectly, which is through the media, that you can't, or that you're bad, or that people fear you, or to be afraid, then there's a long-term negative impact which directly impacts perception. And that's how we have adults who are afraid of the police or are quick to respond and react in situations that can make what potentially was a small interaction turn into a large one.
Oh wait, can I say something?
Let's go right here, and then there was someone else.
Can I say something?
This program at Howard Community College, where we've certainly trained a lot of students. Many of them are your Howard County police officers over the last 15 years, and they've all served with high honors from my perspective, as I've seen them grow in the community from the age of 16, 17, 18, up to now. Many of the present officers who are not here tonight have been on the force 13, 14, 15 years. Let me share a couple quick things with you, because I think what happens is there's so many questions, there's so many views, but the bottom line is when we leave here, we have to have some practical steps that help people in their everyday lives. So, 2 things. I'm an advocate for everybody. Been a police officer, a defense attorney, I work with police officers, work with the judiciary, so I think I have, and I've been a Veterans Administration police officer dealing with mental illness with special training back in the 80s. All of these issues started with number 1. The principal issue that existed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s has caused the nation problems. Police officers have to respect individuals, they have to respect the Constitution, and they have to respect the exercise of an individual's rights. If they do that, 99% of them will never have a problem with the community and will never have a complaint. And when they make a mistake, the community will always forgive good police officers. 2, police officers today are spending a lot of time trying to get the public to understand them. The public's not going to understand them until they gain their respect. However, police officers' number 1 goal is to protect you, but they have to go home safe at night. 3, and most importantly, is the issue of mental illness comes up, but no one wants to fund the mental illness issues, okay? That's the reality. There are no resources. There's so few resources that it's just a talking point. Lastly, enforcement and use of force is supposed to be the last resort. Today it is the first resort because we have police officers who operate with pure fear, which is a training issue, it's a relationship issue, and it's a community understanding issue. So I would just ask that you all consider that if you take the time to get to know the police, they will respect you, and as a consequence, we will have that interaction and community that you spoke about.
Thank you. All right, right here.
In Columbia, they're assigned to all the high schools and some of the middle schools. My particular middle school has a school resource officer, and the African American majority in that school is 40%, but the suspension rate is 85%. I think that's a problem. So what I'm asking you is, how do you see your school resource officers being utilized within the school to reach back to the kids? You're saying you want the kids to respect the police. You're trying to recruit the kids to be police, but when kids are getting felonies at 15, 16, and 17, because we know the school to prison pipeline is real, how do you want to reinforce that relationship with the kids starting early with them? Because from my perspective, they don't have any interaction with your school resource officers other than discipline issues.
Chief Gardner.
That's a good question. One of the things that we're looking to do, first of all, is expand our officers in the middle schools to develop that relationship and work with kids as they then go to high school with those same resource officers. But I will tell you this, one of the difficult aspects of being a school resource officer, I don't want police officers doing the work of administrators and school teachers. Overall, we've had a very good relationship with our school system. Occasionally, we do run into situations where I think a police officer has been put in the middle of what should be a situation that's resolved between a teacher, associate principal, or an administrator. And that is a delicate balance and something that we continually work on, and something that we also work with the school during their in-service training program with new teachers, and also their in-service program before they get started in the new year. So that is an ongoing issue, and it is something that's recognized as a concern that we have to work with.
Thank you.
One of the things we're going to do slightly different to make this a good experience for everyone and to be balanced is that we're going to ask those who desire to ask a brief question. On this side, meet me here. On this side here, and we're going to go left and right, but line up for your questions and answer.
And I want to first say that I agree with what has been said, because I'm going to go in a different direction and look to the future. Two points I'd like to make. The first one is that we have a historical context that a lot of people have mentioned, all the way from slavery forward, that people are going to have to deal with. We're not going to be able to solve this problem until we become aware of that historical context. And, you know, within our schools, within our communities, and then face that. That's already been brought up. I just wanted to reiterate that. But then the second point is what the youth have been saying. And we went to a program where they said that they were being programmed for incarceration, and our schools are failing them. We talked about the income issue, the poverty issue. If we don't want to be here for the next 100 years, my area is maternal and child health, and I've seen a lot of these problems over a long period. We're going to have to address the issue of education. Our schools are failing our young people, and we know it. The way our educational system is funded, let us just be clear, we cannot fund our education system the way it is and expect our schools to change. And then secondly, once you get inside the school, there is tracking. There has always been tracking, And there will always, until we change that so that all of our students are adequately educated, we will be repeating these kind of conversations in the future.
Thank you. Right here. Sir.
All right, my name is Nat Alston, and I give you a different perspective. I'm a former Maryland State Police officer, former Maryland State Police, Prince George's County, and Chief of Police at Bowie State University. I joined the State Police back in 1969. I was the 9th African American to join. So I said it to my Prince George, Howard County people. I give you a double perspective, and I want you to address that. Howard County, we live in this bubble. My son grew up here. I always ask black male fathers, have you had the talk? And every black male understands what I mean by the talk. Not talking sexual, the talk. And my son was here. Howard County, you've got a good culture. But I'm telling people out here too, you need to also look at the Commission on Policing that was done by Chief Ramsey. There's 18,000 police departments in this country. 18,000. And granted, Howard County, you got it, but as you said about Prince George's County, I worked there. And Prince George's County had a culture, and it still does to a degree. Shoot first, ask questions later. And I wore that uniform, wore it and seat pleasant. So I understand that. What I'm saying to everyone in here now too, when let's get back to the issue, black lives do matter. My son's life matters. My 10-year-old grandson now, his life is going to matter. So when you tell me about policing, and I've been on the police, like I said, my undergrad is in law enforcement. And you talk about the culture, I'd say to this crowd in here now, if you're not reading the 2006 report by the FBI, talking about the infiltration of the Ku Klux Klan in police departments, then if you're not reading that and understanding that, then we got a problem. Because guess what? I have to leave this bubble. And to give my son that edge, I had to join. I'm a lifetime member of the Maryland State Police alumni. And to put that on his car. So when he did get stopped by Howard County, Montgomery, Prince George's, while driving while black, they had to give him the edge. Who in the police department, who in your family is a Maryland State Police officer? My father. So the point that I'm saying back to you, we've got to have more than just talk here. We got to have dialogue to go all the way down and drill. Yes. And that's my comment.
All right, before we get to the next question.
Okay, so
tax-paying resident of Howard County, 20 years here, and a few things that I want to bring to our attention, particularly to parents. I am disturbed when I see police officers in schools and at the library. That is not how I believe that the resources for police officers should be used, and we as parents should be concerned about that. I don't know in terms of where there are serious crimes and things occurring why a police officer has to be at the library. That means that we as parents need to look at the role and our jobs as parenting our children. Everyone might not agree with that, but again, there are persons that are intimidated by going to the library and going to public facilities because of our children who are misbehaving at these public places. So that is something that you all should consider. As well, I'm concerned in regard to, there's been a lot of talk, and the word breakdown continued to have what's being used, a breakdown in relationship between the community and the police officers. I think that word is not appropriate. It can't be a breakdown if there was never an existence of a relationship to begin with. And so my experience, as I've heard some of the panelists mention, was the same. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, grew up in an environment where the police were considered kings, we'll just say it that way. And what
we're running out of time.
Is that experience continues to
to be prevalent even in our communities, between community citizens and law enforcement. So it needs to establish a bridge as opposed to looking at a breakdown. We need a bridge.
Thank you. Let's go over here.
Hi, my name's Nicole Turner, and I'm 23 years old. And I've seen police officers, good ones, bad ones, and everyone in between. And my issue is that I see so many reports on television saying, well, this police officer shot this black person. But that's not every traffic stop on the planet, I promise you. And standing on the side of law enforcement, I understand that you have a difficult day, or you may feel that you're in danger some way or the other. But at the same time, the only thing I can see and reflect on is what comes on my TV, what I hear from my friends, what I see on YouTube. And yes, there are some good videos thrown in there. But the thing is, if you're gonna publicize some good videos, but you have so many negative videos, I need you to upgrade and put more good videos on there. So that way my perception is not just one-sided from what I see the majority of. Because if I see the majority of bad stuff, how am I gonna reflect on your good stuff?
My name is John Donaldson. I live in Woodlawn. I'm a City College graduate. I go to church here in Howard County. I've been a correctional officer, and I'm a parent, and I have been a school teacher in the Baltimore City public school system, and I went to church down the street from Congressman Cummings' home. But I just wanted to say this. I came out here a few weeks ago to talk to someone about possibly working in the Howard County public school system. And I saw a very nice school, a nice mix of people. And I asked her, what about black studies? And she said, it's being phased out. And I don't understand how you can talk about about American history without talking about African American history. And I just want to say that if the children are educated from the beginning to understand that we all have a part and what that part was and how important we each are, then they may not grow up to be the bigots.
Okay. Final comment, and we're going to wrap this thing up.
My comment is very brief. Excuse me. My name is Rochelle Harris, and as the Honorable Mr. Cummings stated, mental illness in most cases precipitates drug abuse, and obviously it impacts crime. It's taboo in the African American community to seek therapy or to take psychotropic drugs, etc. What needs to be done to remove that stigma?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you all. Don't leave yet, because I want to answer a question. Thank you to our moderator, Patrice Sanders. While some of you are still in bed, Patrice will be up getting ready for work at 4 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning. So and she's got a nice hour-long drive to get home. So thank you for coming out and spending time with us tonight. Clearly, this is only the beginning of a needed conversations. And Amy, Congressman Cummings' Howard County office the director said to me, we need to have this again, we need to have it at a bigger venue, and we need to continue this conversation, which we promise we will do. We gave you a program when you came in tonight. At the bottom of that program is the web address for the African American Community Roundtable. We will be posting other events, but as the police chief said, we have a a public safety committee for the Roundtable, and we've been meeting with the chief and his staff. We have an event coming up to talk about community policing. That's going to happen out at the Jim Roby Training Center. You see it in your program here. So that's the next step of continuing this conversation. That's planned for October, as soon as we get a Saturday morning nailed down. So you only got 4 days, right, to choose from. As soon as we get a date nailed down, you'll see that. The next forum that we have is coming up on September 26th at St. John Baptist Church. It's going to be an education forum. We want to continue to have these kinds of constructive conversations that allow the community to come out and talk and look for positive solutions. This is only the beginning. As the president of the African American Community Roundtable, it is my privilege and honor to serve all of the men and women of our various organizations and our entire county. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, I want to thank Congressman Cummings and all the elected officials who came out tonight.